average Nigerian adult grew up hearing that phrase. Some say Nigerians' electricity situation is like a game of hide and seek. The constant battle involving candlelight, noisy generators, and rechargeable flashlights. In more than 120 years, the Nigerian electricity sector has evolved from producing 60 kilowatts of electricity through several stages of government ownership to its eventual partial privatization. In 1972, the National Electric Power Authority (NEPA) took charge of generation, transmission, and distribution of electric power in Nigeria. The hope was that it will improve effectiveness while minimizing operational risks. At the time, it had a total generation capacity of about 6,200 megawatts from 2 hydro and 4 thermal power plants. The NEPA era never really lived up to expectation. This resulted in unstable and unreliable power supply in the country, with customers exposed to frequent power cuts and long periods of power outages. The industry was characterized by lack of maintenance of power infrastructure, outdated power plants, low revenue, high losses, power theft, non-cost reflective tariffs, underinvestment, inadequate infrastructure, and a poor organizational structure. Another major issue to look at is that an increase in Nigeria's total population has always not been matched by increase in power generation capacity. For instance, in 1988, available power was increased to 1,273 megawatts, but by 1992, the population had increased to about 80 million. The total available power was 3,000 megawatts. By 1999, only 19 out of the 79 existing power plants were operational, and an average of 28% of the installed capacity, that is 6,200 megawatts, was generated daily. Between 1991 and 1999, there was little or no investment in electricity infrastructure, leaving more than 90 million Nigerians in total darkness. Challenges faced in the NEPA era called for a reform of the power sector with the 2005 Electric Power Sector Reform (EPSR) Act, in addition to the Power Holding Company of Nigeria (PHCN). At the start of the privatization exercise in 2010, electricity supply in Nigeria had improved to an average of 3,825 megawatts, while the Nigerian Bulk Electricity Trading PLC (MBET) was established to take off electric power from generation companies. By July 2014, the total installed capacity of generating plants increased to 8,876 megawatts, but with an available capacity of about 3,795 megawatts. According to the Energy Progress Report 2022, released by Tracking SDG 7, Nigeria has the lowest access to electricity globally, with about 92 million persons out of the country's 200 million population lacking access to power supply. This, it said, was in contrast with Kenya and Uganda's progress in electrification, due to their annual increases of more than 3 percentage points between 2010 and 2020.
Just like a stubborn ailment that has continued to defy treatment, Nigerian power sector, which has undergone different levels of diagnosis and treatment, appears to be resistant to numerous interventions by both the public and private sector. Now, the question that comes to one's mind is, what really is the issue? When is the country going to get it right with its electricity supply?
Despite its reforms, has the nation made any significant progress in the power sector? I go this expert's token. Professor of Energy and Electricity Law at the University of Lagos, UNILAG, Professor Yemi Oke, insists the sector has not recorded significant growth due to foundational factors, as the sector was wrongly privatized.
We're not heading in any direction. We're even receding instead of accelerating in our progress in the power sector. And I have to be honest with Nigerians. After privatization, how much have we been able to add to the megawatts that were on ground? We've actually lost megawatts as against adding. The entities that are the major players in this sector, those who bought the infrastructure, how are they faring in terms of business? I can tell you for free, 93 to 95% of the discos are technically insolvent. Most of them, if not all, most of them are under receivership. That paints a very gloomy picture of what has happened in the power sector. On the flip side, this is a regime that seems to spend the most in a supposedly privatized power sector. So why are we not getting it? Is it that we're ready to progress as a nation and fix that, or we're just deceiving ourselves and we continue to struggle? It's much more than just privatizing for the sake of privatizing.
On the contrary, Executive Director, Research and Advocacy for Association of Nigerian Electricity Distributors, Chief Sunday Oduton, says the sector has seen growth and can only get better.
I would say that it has been a very interesting journey, but I can confirm that we've moved forward. We are not where we are supposed to be, and there are so many reasons why we're where we are and why we're not where we ought to be. But in terms of whether or not we have made progress, I can say that on the part of the government, federal government, on the part of the sectorial participants, I can say that yes, a lot of progress has been made. If you look at the generation of electricity as at the 1st of November 2013, compare what we have today, yes, we've inched forward, but like I said, it is a journey. So that journey is a long journey, and it's a gradual journey. So many things are involved in that journey. With a little bit of patience and better focus, we should be able to surmount all the problems that we have in the sector.
Rather than rely solely on the federal government to address the electricity access gap, some states, notably Lagos, Edo, Kaduna states, argued for full decentralization of the Nigerian electricity supply sector. On the 17th of March 2023, ex-President Muhammadu Buhari assented the constitutional amendment allowing states in the country to generate, transmit, and distribute electricity in areas not covered by national grid. In just a few days in office, President Bola Tinubu signed the 2023 electricity bill into law. The law provides a framework for the improvement of access to electricity in rural, unserved, underserved, semi-urban, and urban areas. Professor Yemi Oke believes though the new law is the way to go, it should not be celebrated yet, as it will be a huge burden on states.
State government, of course, there's a kind of shifting of institutional responsibilities to state governments, clearly. So nobody's going to call the federal government to question for not providing electricity. Why? Because with the recent alteration of the Constitution, it clearly shows that one, in respect of areas covered by a national grid, state government can legislate in respect of transmission, generation, and distribution. Similarly, In respect of areas not covered by a national grid, state government can legislate and make laws or policies in respect of generation, transmission, and distribution. So whichever way you look at it, states are now in this kind of challenge that Nigerians will now have to be asking questions from the state government as to why and why not, why they're not having electricity. The federal government seems to have extricated itself from the blame, shifting it to the state government now. Of course, the federal government might still continue to undertake policy and strategic steps or issues in the power sector. But now, effectively, the states also are now taxed maximally. And the reality is that it's hugely expensive. It's costly to generate a megawatt. It's a lot of money that is involved. Even if, for instance, one of the analysis we did was to look at Ogun State and say Ogun State should generate some 14,000 megawatts to effectively power its development at the rate that, based on the rate at which the state is growing. And if that is the case, the Ogun State government would need some 47 trillion to be able to do that. Meaning it will take like 17 years to even be able to generate that, assuming it diverts all its revenues strictly to generating electricity, which is not realistic. So, do they have carrying capacity? So, if it generates, can they afford to pay a kind of cost-reflective tariff, a tariff that will make the investor to stay in business in certain states in the north, in the east, in the south, in the west?
What has happened is a welcome development. What that will simply do is that it will open up the sector to more players, more participants. It will create more competition, healthy competition. It will enable our states as federation units in a federal republic to also get involved. So it won't be about, I can't do anything. Say a governor saying, there's nothing I can do because the electricity generation, transmission and distribution is in the exclusive list. What they have done simply is that they brought it down into the concurrent list. That's what has happened. And that will help new investors, new players. But remember, when you talk about investment, you should be thinking about many other things that goes with it. You can't talk about foreign direct investment if you don't look at the enabling environment. You can't talk about enabling environment if you don't look at the issue of security. And it's not just about security, you have to even look at our financial sector. Because, for instance, Nigerians need to be metered. We as ANET have said it many times in the past, that the meter manufacturers or meter suppliers in Nigeria ought to be given loan at a single-digit rate. Single-digit. One, to enable them to bring this thing in large to produce EMAs. Even we should get to a point in this country where in critical sectors, the government should look at giving them tax holidays. So if you do that, it will help the economy, it will help the nation. Tax breaks, that happens in other countries. You have to give incentive to businessmen. That is the only way they can perform optimally. The states don't have to be rich to be able to do things or to be able to get more innovative. Innovation is not about how much do I have today. You can also think outside the box and see how much you can begin to generate more than what you were generating before in terms of IGR.
In a state like Benue, the Commissioner for Rural Development and Cooperatives, Engineer Victor Okaha, says the law is far from being a burden to the states, but rather a way to fix some issues within the states.
I don't see an offloading of a burden from the federal government to the states. In fairness to the federal government and for the good of the nation, the bill, the amendments that took off some items on the exclusive list and put it in the inclusive list, if there is any list like that. It's a welcome development for states. Remember that there were some regional power generation corporations in Plateau. There is something that exists like that. They are generating electricity and distributing it for a long time, and it's been a huge success. So if states look into power generation as a possible way of investing, it will be a veritable way of generating income for the states, and it solves some of the problems. As a state, for example, Benue State has invested in power distribution assets like lines, power lines, poles, transformers, and several accessories. It will interest you that an assessment was done about the volume of investment Benue has put into these assets to the tune of over 11 billion. That this was before privatization. Yeah, many times people are saying that the state should give them transformer, come and do electricity for us. Actually, it wasn't the duty of the state to do this, but because states would like to show that they are a responsible government, they go to do this. Normally, the power distribution companies were supposed to refund states the monies they use in doing this. That has never been done. With this bill that has allowed states to invest in this area, states will take on the role of doing that investment, and it will also give them the benefit of generating revenue. You are aware that when we go and do electrification of a suburb or a neighborhood, as soon as we will do the electrification project and power comes on, the JEDC will go there and begin to collect revenues, reaping where they never sow. With this bill, the states can also go on to collect revenue for power generation they do.
I can say it's a welcome development because the center is overloaded. It's overloaded. There is high time to decentralize some issues. I can give you an example of Kano. If you go to Kano, they generated their energy, they generate themselves. And if you go to Kano, you will see this issue of there's no power here, there's no power there, because they control it themselves. So there is efficiency in monitoring of what is on ground.
Actually, the issue of electricity has become a worrisome issue in this country. And definitely, if every state will be allowed to generate their own electricity and control the issue that has to do with electricity, it will be good for this country, better than having all these different companies from various places.
It's a way forward to the state. If the state can generate their own electricity, it's a welcome development. Like here in Makurdi, we rely on federal government. Sometimes they will say there's a problem in Enugu, Makurdi will be in darkness. Sometimes they say there's a problem in Jos, Makurdi will be in darkness. But if state can generate their own electricity and distribute, it's a welcome development. There's nothing wrong if the state can afford it.
Lagos, Nigeria's digital epicenter and technology hub, has been pursuing its megacity ambitions. Though Lagos has since made plans to bring reliable power supply to its population of more than 21 million people, some business owners are wailing.
I think throughout for like 3 days this week, no power supply at all. And the tariff is even quite high, and no power. And yet the tariff is still high. They should work on the tariff. It's too high. It's too high for business owners. We are really suffering. It's not funny. Because, by the time you start changing prices, you can't, somebody buying, they are not ready to listen to you. You tell them government, they expect you to have a generator. Like, you don't even run a business in Nigeria without having a standby power supply.
If I said that I should talk about the electricity here, In Shonaike, Kosike, so it's very, very bad. Our work is very, very slow here because we don't have enough light to use. I want to use generator.
Then, if we buy, assuming we buy 1,000, we can use it for 2 months. Then, but now we can't use it. Maybe it's a week.
Experts point out how states can afford to generate, transmit, and distribute electricity, saying the success of this initiative will largely depend on the commitment and readiness of state governments to establish their independent electricity markets and create a strong and independent regulatory agency to oversee implementation.
We need to now restructure the entirety of the power architecture of the country. Even if you give states power to make laws in respect of areas covered by a national grid, at best they will try to put in place, like Lagos state government is doing, a law, the enabling law that will enable them to have their own institutional arrangement to be able to license, so that they can license entities and companies to come and generate, transmit, and distribute. States will need to put in place appropriate structure to be able to attract serious minded investors. Not just any kind of investor like the federal government did, that is causing the problems that we're all experiencing now. State government will need to get serious minded, technologically strong, financially buoyant investors.
The regulator, Nigerian Electricity Regulatory Commission, NEC, they have also done a lot in the past 10 years. We've made a lot of progress, but I believe that we'll get there. What we should be interested in doing is having a more collaborative effort, working together with the government, with our regulator, with all other participants to ensure that we make the sector whole. Because a sector that is hugely indebted to the banks cannot survive. So it is the survivor that we're looking for.
To a large extent, NRC, like a typical Nigerian institution, is weak. And I think the new administration will need to do a whole lot. But the starting point is to realize that it's not going to be business as usual. And unless you have a regulator that is independent, that is efficient, a regulator that regulates itself, then you're not going to have a sector, an industry that is progressive. Even you need to regulate effectively, that the sector will mature up to a level that it will now self-regulate itself.
With a new administration in place, experts reason that states' control of their electricity markets will result in increased efficiency, better service delivery, and overall improved power supply to consumers.
The first thing that the new administration will need to do is to ensure that those that will man the energy sector, particularly the power sector, are people who are skilled and knowledgeable about the industry, putting the right peg in the right holes. That's the beginning of success, because they understand the sector, they know the challenges of the sector, they know what to do, and they are fearless. They're fearless because they want to do it right, they want to do the right thing.
How can we put the nation first? How can we all see ourselves as one, working towards the same goal? What is the goal? Providing sufficient electricity for Nigerians, ending the era of estimated billing, creating a situation whereby there will be no more trust issues between service providers and customers, ensuring that we serve our customers both in the urban centers and the rural areas, and for customers to also be conscientious enough to stop bypassing their meters, to stop illegal connection, to stop giving or taking bribe, both ways. So at the end of the day, that collaboration, cooperation, and of course the alignment of the value chain will get us where we're supposed to be.
President Tinubu says his critical goal is to generate 15,000 megawatts of electricity distributable to all categories of consumers nationwide, and to ensure 24/7 sustainable supply within the next 4 years. Nigerians can only hope that under President Tinubu, electricity supply is not going to be business as usual.